Hi, my name is Stephen, and this is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology, and this is episode 24, Something's Happening in January. Okay, today we're going to be looking at the astrology chart of the U.S. For kind of a specific time period in January, mid-January in general, and I'll give the dates in a minute. And I'll be referring to the astrology charts of the New York Stock Exchange, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and just verbally giving you the transits that are taking place in these charts. I'm doing this because I think this episode would become too complicated. But the main overriding point here is that there are major things happening astrologically around mid-January, specifically maybe between the 9th of January to about the 15th. And then we'll be looking at some price charts and looking at what the context is for trading relative to what's going on in the astrology. And finally, a Fed announcement that is pretty wild, that over the next month they're going to be adding $500 billion to the system. Okay, here's the U.S. chart. It's in the middle here. This is sort of the natal chart of the USA. And in the outer ring are the transits that will be taking place generally between the 10th and the 13th of next month. And I've touched on this before in other videos, but we've had some really rare and stressful and challenging transits taking place for the U.S. for the last couple years in particular. Now, in this outer ring, you see we have Saturn next month, keep that in mind, conjoining Pluto at 22 degrees Capricorn. Now, relative to the U.S. chart, it's becoming very close to the position of Mercury in that chart. Essentially, it is an opposition. It'll become more exact, each one maybe individually, but here they're together, which I think makes it a more stressful time period. In addition, we see some other unusual configurations where we have Mercury right here. If you can see my cursor, it's kind of dark, but Mercury and the Sun are at 19 degrees Capricorn, and this just happens to be the midpoint in the natal chart of Mercury and the Sun. If you figure out the degree that's right midway between those two planets, it's 19 degrees. In addition, on this particular time period, we're having a full moon. Here's the Sun at that time in the sky. Moon is opposite. Full moon in Cancer. Adds another layer of sort of intensity. But the real trigger point on why I am concentrating on this time period and combining this chart and what's happening to it to the markets that I often analyze is that on this date we have, I think it's specifically, if I remember right, it's the 12th, but in general the trigger could be any time between the 10th or the 13th, could be the activation date. But we have Mars transiting the ascendant of the U.S. chart. Happens every 2 years, and this is a very strong, action-oriented, usually kind of stressful. Could deal with some disturbances, whether it's a domestic event or provocation towards war or something like that, but it is, there's something that's going to stand out that's related to Mars right during that weekend. So in combination, there's just a lot of stress going on in the U.S. during that mid-January period. And it may show up in the markets, and that wouldn't surprise me, and we could see some real movement taking place. So here's the Dow Jones Industrials. For all the markets in this episode, I've done a longer-term daily chart that goes back almost a year so that you can kind of stand back and you can see the channel that's being formed here. This very steady, rise is continuing to all-time highs. We don't appear to be, exceedingly overbought at the moment. But this is the big picture I wanted to point out, and we can take a look at the, MACD momentum indicators at the bottom here, just as a quick glance. For each market, then we'll zoom in a little bit, and we'll see what's going on. Ever since we broke this resistance area, we've been moving to all-time highs. And again, as I've noted in the past, I think this is the most manipulative market in the world, and maybe gold is a close second. So some of the astrology is sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Let's just be blunt about it. Because these last two dates, the astrology, again, are the vertical lines I've drawn in, and they relate to the astrology of the Dow Jones Industrials. Typically, after 20 years of studying this, these should have been strong reversal energies. And in a more honest market, we would have seen a reversal down. But this market is so much geared to what the Federal Reserve does. They're adding energy to this market. So when I look ahead and I look into January, into these dates that I was referring to with the U.S. chart, I don't really see any strong bearish energies. Something is going to have to come out, what's the term that's used? Just some sort of tail risk is going to have to enter into the scene, and something unexpected will possibly come in. Otherwise, I see this market staying high. Okay, so if something out of the blue comes in that shakes people's confidence, then it could really take a dive, because we are exceedingly overbought. We are completely dependent on the Fed, and we're just disconnected from reality in many respects. So having said that, play the technicals, put in stops if you need to, but with the Fed talking about adding $500 billion over a period of a month, this market could continue going higher. Okay, gold, big picture. We are just grinding down a channel here. We could continue lower. However, we are very oversold. So stand back, look at how oversold we are. This doesn't last forever. It can continue for periods longer than our patience can put up with, but we are very oversold, and we have some strong astrology coming into the scene, into the picture in that January time frame. So let's look at a little closer perspective. Again, the vertical lines are strong astrological elements related to gold. This one in particular was very strong here about a week ago. And, you have to combine the technicals, the support, resistance, trend lines, and so forth. But I was curious, at the least, to see if that energy would have allowed us to break through this downtrend line, that green, either that or this 50-day moving average, which it's bumping up against right now. It wasn't, okay? The bearish energy is continuing. This weekend, this happens to be December, what is this? What's the date today? December 6. I don't know what the date is. I can't check on it really quickly. hang on, let's see. It's the 14th. I was going to say the 13th. I didn't want to make a mistake. So it's Saturday the 14th. And so it's Saturday the 14th. Gold isn't trading today. However, we've got, some astrology going on that may reflect itself in Sunday afternoon futures trading. We'll just have to see. But my point with gold is that we have some very strong stuff happening in that January, mid-January time period. And I can touch upon what really is going on. Really rare stuff. We have that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the sky, which I referred to is at 22 degrees Capricorn. That is conjunct Venus in the gold chart. We will have Jupiter conjunct Sun in the gold chart. Right around, I think it's something like I can be really specific here, the 2nd of January, we have another very bullish signal. So actually from the 2nd of January in through January 15th are rare, unusually bullish energy in this chart. So again, play the technicals, watch where these trend lines, moving averages are, but I'm very much focused in this area, in January into mid-January. And the same kind of holds true for silver, because oddly enough, the silver has a very strong emphasis in cancer elements, while gold has a very strong emphasis on Capricorn elements. And the Saturn-Pluto energy, which is in Capricorn right now, transiting, is also affecting strongly anything or anyone who has elements in Cancer, because that's the opposite sign. And so, that's why often silver and gold kind of trade in tandem. And here again we have this long-term view of silver, again in sort of a downtrending channel, possibly a wedge, very oversold. You can come back here and see that those periods can continue for a while, but we are very oversold, and like gold, we have some rare and oftentimes bullish things happening when we get into January. So let me take a look at my notes here real quickly. Now, unlike gold, that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the sky will be opposite Pluto, the natal Pluto of silver. And so this could be extremely bullish, but the opposite sometimes is true too, where just the repression, suppression, manipulation could be at its pinnacle. But other things lead me to think that might not be the case, because there are compounded aspects in gold and silver's charts that are very rare and usually indicate big changes. Okay, let's just leave it at that. But let me look at my notes and I can tell you when some of these first dates are happening in silver. So yeah, the December 27th, 26th, and December 26th and 27th, and that exact weekend, the 9th, 10th, Thursday, Friday of January into early next week, just exactly like when we were looking at the US chart. Those are very important dates that do not take place very often. So let's move on. Now, I like cryptocurrencies. I trade, I invest in Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is being manipulated, but it is grinding down through the same channel as well. However, there are not as many astrological elements, and I just accidentally moved ahead, elements in Bitcoin as there are gold and silver. We do, though, have some, and one of them is we are having, just like in silver, we're having, and gold for that matter, we are having a Jupiter-Sun conjunction take place in the Bitcoin chart. And this only occurs, let me get the date for it. These things are a little bit difficult to organize. That date is actually not happening until February 1st, okay? That Jupiter-Sun conjunction. That happens every 12 years. And so in astrological financial astrology, it's looking at these rare events and combining that and putting that in the context of the price chart is what we need to do. And so, there may be a delay in Bitcoin in its price breaking out of this channel. That may be the upshot of what I'm trying to say here. At least, it may go with gold, but Bitcoin kind of trades on its own, and I would look for that early February date. Okay, USD, US dollar, at least this is the proxy for it. This is the big picture. We're kind of in neutral zones and in momentum indicators, but we are kind of starting to lose our bullish energy in the gold chart. We're breaking through multiple trend lines. The astrology, does hold up with the US dollar like in gold. You can see it a little bit more closely here. We see reversal points very often on key astrological days. We did have one where you see my cursor right there and not much happened. And so just like in technical analysis, when a breakout fails, it's telling you something, okay? When you see a reversal and a breakout and then a fail. This should have been a very bullish indicator, okay? And it wasn't. And again, if you can please be patient with me while I dig into my notes and look at the US dollar. But the US dollar has typically some bullish energy at the end of this month, okay? And then sort of January 23rd or something. So we'll have to see. They may only be little bounces, but I have them drawn in here. And you can see January 2nd was one of them down here. I didn't draw my price chart out far enough to, but yeah, I would say December 26th, just sort of an odd day right after Christmas, and January 2nd are the next ones. But then you just can't go solely on the astrology. We've got a pattern forming here of a big head and shoulders. And if I would have drawn a line right there, which would have been the neckline, which we're getting close to, we may be bouncing off that neckline. But if this rolls over, which it looks like it is, breaks that neckline, then that could be our signal that inflation is picking up and could be in another way of describing why we get big rallies, potentially big rallies in gold and silver in January. Okay? Okay, here's the article, Zero Hedge article, massive, huge, largest ever Fed will flood the market with $500 billion in liquidity to avoid year-end repo crisis. And so that's a lot of money, and the Fed will have boosted its balance sheet back up to its highest ever in history. And I think this is the most money it ever pushed into the system in a 30-day period. So this is, you just have to stand back and say, why are they doing this? Okay, this is not something you do in a healthy market when the banks are healthy or when the banks trust each other. And so you could run down the rest of this article at Zero Hedge. It came out within the last couple of days. Again, this is December 14th, and read it for yourself. But this is really not made headlines, and this is just a huge deal. and it's just ridiculous for people to avoid it, because this is a major event and is indicative of something really going on behind the scenes in the banking system. Okay, that's it for today. My name is Stephen. I have a master's degree in psychology and professional artist. I've been studying astrology for 40 years and have been applying it to financial markets for 25. Again, it's not the end-all be-all of financial analysis. You have to combine it with technical analysis and fundamental stuff, but I think it does give one an advantage, particularly a timing advantage. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and consider subscribing. I'm still traveling. I'm not doing these quite as often as I used to, but every 2 weeks I plan on continuing. So thank you for listening, and bye for now.